Live on WFLA Now. With a specialized degree in climate, Chief Meteorologist and Climate Specialist Jeff Berardelli is pioneering the way we look at climate and extreme weather. Welcome to Jeff's Climate Classroom, powered by ArmorView Window and Door.
All right, everybody, welcome to this week's Climate Classroom. Believe it or not, it is almost October already, but the tropics are finally showing signs of heating up. Now, next week, we're likely going to have some type of tropical system, maybe even a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. And today, we're giving you kind of an overview of what's happening right now. And more importantly, we're going to take your questions, because I think we're going to be dealing with this system for quite a while. This could be really a long haul for us. So I encourage you to post those questions on our Facebook page. And I want to bring up my co-host for today.
Hi, everybody.
And that is the lovely Val Simpson right there. Let me get you an even closer shot.
All right, there you go. Okay, well, I'm excited about this episode. We have a lot to talk about. So I do want to remind everybody just what Jeff was saying. This is an interactive streaming episode. So that means that we can take your questions, your comments. I can bring them up to Jeff. So anything that you might want to ask Jeff, I'm going to be watching our Facebook page. That's where you can leave your questions for us, and we'll be happy to help and answer.
And we are going to be working overtime. And I have a feeling that Val is going to have to sleep here at the station next week. No, because we actually don't know where this system's going to go. What we do know is it's going to be annoying because it's going to be in the Gulf for a long time. I think this thing is going to get stuck for a time and then try to decide which direction it's going to go. And what you're going to notice in this episode is that we don't know where it's going to go. There are a lot of question marks. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's anything from the range of a tropical storm to a major hurricane in the Gulf sometime next week. And there's anywhere of a landfall possibility from Texas all the way to Florida.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, there's some times where we have great certainty. We know exactly where a system is going to go. And you'll hear me say we have a lot of certainty. We know it's headed in this general direction.
That's a great. So how do we get that certainty? What do we look for?
It's a good question. Okay. So it depends on how defined the upper level steering pattern is and how much agreement we have in the models.
Okay.
The agreement we have in the models right now is something is likely to form in the southern Gulf of Mexico early next week. That's where the agreement ends. After that, the upper level patterns on all the models are very different. All four of the main models that we use, they're all very different from each other.
Yeah.
And even within the model itself, sometimes we take a model and we run it like 20 to 50 times. It's called ensembles.
Yeah.
The ensembles are like that too. They're like spaghetti. So the more spaghetti we see, the more we know that there's a lot of uncertainty in the steering flow.
So we don't know where it's headed, and we don't know the intensity, but we do know that it's happening.
There's going to be a storm in the Gulf. So let me first show you this right here. This right here is the American model.
Okay.
And the American model has the strongest storm. Major hurricane, possibly. Eastern Gulf of Mexico would possibly even threaten Florida in the long range, okay? But that is, I would say, the odd man out in this situation. I think that some of the other models are probably a little bit more reliable in this particular storm.
I was going to ask you that. In the past, or the trends that we see usually, is the American model, does it
it varies.
How reliable?
In this particular case, I'm diagnosing the model and I'm saying, I don't know about that steering flow. That looks suspect. Also, I should let you know, I'm sorry for coughing. I have a cold. Val has a cold. Rebecca has a cold. Literally, the whole weather center has a cold right now. So I want to apologize.
It's the season. All the kids went back to school.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what happens.
All right, let me bring the graphics back up for you again.
Yeah.
And let's show you the area that we're watching. And it's only a 40% chance of development. Why does the National Hurricane Center only 40%? It's because it's such a slow burn. It's such a slow process. We do think it's going to develop, and that's up from 20% yesterday. So very slowly, they're pushing the development chance up. Also, I think because this season we thought it was going to be like an off to the races season. We thought it was going to be an overactive season.
Yeah.
Hadn't turned out to be. I think everybody's a little trigger shy.
Yeah.
Because we're waiting. And plus, there's no storms there. There's zero. There's literally nothing.
There's nothing. Usually we see the storms forming, even if they're disorganized, but there's absolutely nothing there right now.
There's no wave. There's no disturbance.
No.
But we're going to talk about what. We're going to talk you what?
I was going to ask you, what do we have that?
All the computers. We have
tropical.
The computer models.
What about tropical moisture?
Yeah, there's plenty of tropical moisture down there.
And sea surface temperatures?
They're off the charts. And we're going to show you that too. So the sea surface temperatures in many respects are at record levels. we're going to talk to you about why this time of year we do work. The reason, so Keith Kate, who's our main anchor here at the station, asked me yesterday, he's like, why are we talking about this like 7-8 days ahead? Yeah. And I said, well, it's because not only do we have decent computer model agreement, but also it makes sense for this time of year. This time of year, this is where systems form. Oh, by the way, next Saturday is the anniversary of Hurricane Ian, which hit the west coast of Florida.
That's right.
So there are a lot of reasons why we think this is something that we need to keep talking about over and over again, just to alert the public that there's something out there.
Yeah.
But we don't know much more than that. So let me talk about this. This is interesting. So this time of year, we start to shift our attention from those African waves to the Central American gyre, which typically forms during autumn. And it's this upper level circulation, really big upper level circulation, but sometimes it spits out pieces of energy. And sometimes those pieces of energy can start to spin if they get thunderstorms and consolidate and become tropical systems. So that's one of the reasons why we think this thing is going to form next week. And now here are the computer models. Take a look. I mean, it's literally the gamut.
Yeah.
And here's the reason why. It depends on exactly where and how early it forms. The earlier it forms and the further east it forms, the better chance that it gets to Florida.
Right.
The longer it takes to form, the further west it's going to slide into the Western Gulf. Then it ends up somewhere in the Western Gulf of Mexico. Now, all these tracks end on Saturday with one exception. The German model in yellow, that only goes out to Thursday. So we don't know where it's going to go on Friday and Saturday. So you can see, though, the American model has the storm right over Tampa.
Yeah.
That is next Saturday. And by the way, it's the anniversary of Ian, of all days.
Right.
The European model is much weaker and further west.
Okay.
The Canadian model is pretty strong, and it brings the storm into Louisiana by next Saturday morning. Okay? The European is stuck out there next Saturday morning, and that's I would say, if there's any lesson, Val, let me bring us back into the picture. If there's any lesson from the models this morning, is everything is delayed. Everything's going to take longer, and I have a lot of confidence in that. I don't know if you were here yesterday. I was talking to Rebecca, and I'm like, I don't buy these fast solutions. The storm, jettisoning out of the Caribbean and heading straight for land by like Wednesday, which is what some of the models were showing.
Right.
I never bought that. I said, that doesn't make any sense. There's no way this thing is going to go from no storms, a zero there, to a tropical storm and then jettison right out.
It didn't make
sense.
sense.
Well, sure enough, the models make a lot more sense today. Everything's going to take an extra couple of days, which means we're going to be agonizingly watching this for a while.
And looking at these 4 tracks, which one would you say that it's the most reliable, or in the past, the trends that we've seen?
Well, because I'm a smart meteorologist, I will take the average of all those computer models. No, I don't know, and I don't want to. I tend to think it's not going to be the green.
Okay,
and it's not because I'm hoping that I am hoping it doesn't hit.
Right.
Right.
But just because.
But I just don't buy that the system's going to be able to take a ride on the jet stream, because it's really, I'd have to show you the jet stream. I don't actually have it in our graphics because it's a really complicated upper level scenario. But in this particular case, it barely is able to catch on to a jet stream that's already moving away into the Atlantic Ocean. So if it's like a few hours late, it's not going to be able to catch that jet. It's not going to end up moving east. So I tend to doubt it, but it's possible. But it doesn't mean, look at the European model, get stuck 10 days from now, get stuck in the Western Gulf of Mexico, and it's stuck.
Right.
So if a storm or a front comes and sweeps in, well, then that, believe it or not, even though it's that far to the west, south of Houston, it could be pulled back our way.
Right.
So just because it's in the Western Gulf doesn't mean that it won't come back. Of course, it's less likely, though.
Right. And also, just because it's not going to impact directly doesn't mean that we might not see, showers from the exterior bands or things like that if it were to come closer to our area, kind of like what we saw earlier this year with Debbie.
Sure. And remember, our viewers don't just live here in Tampa. They live all around the Gulf Coast. So the other thing I want to show you, there we go. The ocean heat content is in fact at record levels, even hotter than last year. And last year was off the charts in both the Northern Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. So clearly this has the energy it needs to fuel itself. And one other thing I want to mention, and I want to get to questions too.
Yeah.
Is right there. This is a look at ocean temperatures in the Pacific. I'm showing you that because La Nina has been very resistant to develop.
Yeah.
But it finally is starting to develop. We finally reached a critical threshold in ocean temperatures in the equatorial Pacific, such that La Nina is developing. When La Nina develops, it reduces wind shear in the Atlantic, and it makes the Atlantic more hospitable to tropical systems that can potentially form.
More favorable, perhaps.
Yeah. So again, we want to encourage you to post your questions on our Facebook page. I have a couple more maps, but
let me go through those maps watching it.
I think I have another map.
Yeah. Somebody's making comments saying that that they don't want to get scared or they use the word freaked out.
Yeah.
But this is mostly just so that you can stay
for awareness.
Exactly. Awareness purposes only. I mean, I think anybody that lives around the Gulf of Mexico should be paying attention to what's happening. Luckily, we live in an area where we have time to prep for a hurricane. Imagine in California with earthquakes and things like that. We wouldn't be able to. So this is an advantage that we have thanks to all these computer models. Okay, let's take a look at this.
Yeah, so I want to show you this, and because this is why.
Oh, we were talking about this yesterday.
Yeah, this is why things shift this time of year. So what you'll notice is during the summertime, this is kind of an August scenario. We have high pressure, a big Bermuda high, and strong easterly winds across the tropics, which push the storms west into the Gulf. You can see how those red hours push everything westward. So it's more likely that the east coast of Florida gets hit, or that the storm heads towards the Yucatan or heads towards Texas and Louisiana. But as we head into September and especially October, the pattern changes. High pressure weakens, low pressure from the Great Lakes and a general dip in the jet stream, colder air starts to make its way south. And that forces the jet stream near the Gulf of Mexico. And by that time, if a storm's in the Gulf, it starts to feel the tug of that westerly flow and starts to kind of head off in our direction.
I can see that, yeah.
The result of that is as we head into the end of September and especially October, this is the general flow that we end up seeing here, which is storms that are over the Gulf or the Northern Caribbean, they tend to bend back towards Florida. So we are most vulnerable, Val, at the end of September and October. And I'll bring up two storms. We bring up Ian, right? We brought it up September 28th.
Yeah.
And Wilma was in October.
Right.
And Wilma was the strong storm hit the west coast of Florida.
Yeah. That's true.
Okay, so I'm ready for
Are
any
you ready for some questions? We do have some questions. It says, hey, Jeff, anything new on why it's a slow season on hurricanes?
That's a great question. So let me bring you back into the picture here.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say anything new. There's a lot of things going on. One of those things is that the thunderstorms emerging off of Africa have been emerging further north.
Right.
Much further north than they do normally. Africa has had tremendous flooding. It's a dire situation there. Hundreds of people are dead.
Yeah.
And it's because rain keeps falling in the desert, in places that it shouldn't be falling. Partly that's due to the fact that the whole zone, we call it the ITCZ, the Intertropical Convergence Zone. That whole zone has shifted from the Sahel into the Sahara Desert, or at least partly. And so the waves are emerging in the Atlantic in unfavorable conditions, in cooler water and with drier air. Right. Also in the North Atlantic, we've had this really weird jet stream pattern. Very, very strong North Atlantic oscillation. The strongest ever on record. So that's messing up the wind flow during the summertime in the Northern Atlantic and allowing, I think, dry air to get into the Eastern Atlantic. So as these tropical waves have been coming off of the African coast, they've been just fizzling.
This change is not associated with La Nina. It's not something that we could say it's not associated. Okay.
But it's a good point you make. La Nina, we thought earlier in the season it may develop in August. It's taken until now. So literally it's not going to have developed until October. So La Nina was late. And that also probably would have reduced the wind shear a little bit more in the Atlantic if La Nina had formed earlier. So there's a lot of different reasons. To be honest, what's happening in Africa, this could very well be a climate change response. And if it is a climate change response, then this is something we're going to be seeing more likely as we head into the future. Because it's one thing that was predicted is the zone of thunderstorms, because it's warming in the northern hemisphere more, that the whole zone would lift north.
Yeah.
Because the contrast between cold and warm would be further north.
Right.
You know?
Yes. However, it's favorable for us because we don't have to work overtime or stay overnight here at the weather center.
We don't want hurricanes here.
We don't want hurricanes. That's right.
But it also may be shifting our season such that it's backloaded, which we're going to see now. If what it turns out to be is that this is a backloaded season, meaning that everything instead of getting going August 20th, it gets going September 20th.
Right. Or we're going to see a lot of intensity in anything that does form because of it. Kind of like just
we'll see
blowing
what
off
happens.
some steam, kind of like what we saw with Beryl.
A storm that gets stuck in the southern Gulf of Mexico with no strong steering or no strong wind shear this time of year, when you have record ocean heat content and sea surface temperatures, I got to tell you, there'll be some dry air there. Yeah. But the longer it sits there, especially if it's moving at least at 5 miles an hour, so it has a chance to become a very strong storm.
Yeah.
You don't get much warmer waters in the northern Caribbean and the southern part of the Gulf of Mexico.
Right.
So we don't want it to be there too long.
We do have a question from Mildred. She says, I'm traveling on Wednesday to the Northeast. Would we know before then if a hurricane is coming?
So we would probably know where it's, if it's coming and where it's going to go. But you don't have to worry about leaving on Wednesday because we're not going to have any weather on Wednesday. Yeah, I don't think. It's unlikely. So the point is, I think she's probably wondering if she needs to, batten down the hatches at her house, get her house ready just in case. We should know pretty well by Wednesday if we think it's coming in our direction, I think.
Donna says, hey, Jeff, what about the record highs north of Florida? Won't that change weather patterns?
The record highs north of Florida, I don't know if that means record high temperatures, record high pressure. Yeah, I mean...
Yeah,
look,
Donna, if you could specify on that question.
Any kind of change in the overall climate, and we're seeing that obviously with climate change, is going to impact hurricane seasons because it's going to shift the zone of everything, right? Not only does it add more heat to the Atlantic, but it also kind of shifts zones. So in this particular case, if these disturbances that come off of Africa are not able to develop, then you end up with less storms in the future, right?
Yeah.
But because the ocean temperatures are warmer, the ones that form get stronger. And I will tell you that most of the research for the future about hurricanes is that we may overall have less storms globally, but that the ones that form will have a greater chance of becoming intense major hurricanes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That right there, that's a statement. Okay, Steve has a question. He says, just assuming that since Tampa is one of the 4 scenarios from the model, if there was a storm to form anywhere in the Gulf, would it have enough steam to pick up to a Cat 3 or higher before it would possibly hit Tampa?
There's no doubt that a storm could potentially become a Cat 3. I will say that the models haven't shown that. The American model has shown a borderline Cat 3, and some of the other models have shown middle of the road hurricanes. But I have to tell you that, if it's there for a couple of days and there's not much wind shear, I don't see a limit as to how strong the storm could get, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there is some dry air that could limit it for a time, but the longer it's there, the better chance that it'll encounter a perfect environment such that it could get stronger and stronger.
We have a comment, not a question, from Andrew. He says, great, I'm headed to Panama City for the week. So he's going to be spending, how is it looking in Panama?
I doubt that this thing's getting to Panama City, if it goes to Panama City, until Friday or Saturday at the earliest. So you're probably good most of the week. And to be honest, maybe longer than that.
Steve just wrote a comment. He said, great, we're doomed.
We're definitely not saying that.
He's in Largo, Steve. Thank you, Steve, for your...
Yeah. Look, again, I don't think that...
somebody wrote, what about Saharan dust? I guess they want to take it back to what you were explaining about.
Here's the crazy part. We had very high Saharan dust in July and almost record low Saharan dust in August. So wait a second, why am I scratching my head? If we had a lot of Saharan dust, we'd say, oh, that's the reason nothing formed.
Right.
There wasn't much Saharan dust at all.
Yeah.
Turns out that's definitely not the reason why hurricane season didn't activate. We're all befuddled, I would say. A lot of us, meteorologists, climate experts, especially the hurricane experts, we know that we know the various reasons why hurricane season hasn't been that bad so far.
Yep.
And so I would just say there's no smoking gun. It's a lot of different things that seem to have. I would say the 2 things are the weird steering pattern in the North Atlantic called the NAO, North Atlantic Oscillation, which has been in record territory. And I would also say this very odd, tropical thunderstorm feed from Africa that we call, again, the ITCZ, which has been far north. And you can Google it if you want. The flooding in Africa is crazy right now.
Yeah.
The whole pattern is all, if you don't mind me using the word screwed up. Up.
No, use it.
I don't know if you've seen the flooding in Europe right now.
Yeah.
Tropical. I think it was called Storm Daniel. I think they named it. Not sure about the name, but I think that's what.
Yeah,
it has been devastating in Poland and in Austria, and they've seen like several feet of snow in the Alps. Not even really that high in the Alps.
Yeah.
So it's been a really weird pattern.
Yeah.
And it could very well be the climate change signal, and then maybe some other natural variability things like the North Atlantic Oscillation, which, by the way, is a natural oscillation, but it's never been quite as strong as it is during the middle of the summer.
Good deal. We have a question from Dorothy. She says, hi, I have a party planned for next Saturday at Clearwater Coves. She wants to know, will I know if I have to cancel it? Will she know?
I think you're going to know, but I don't think we'll know until Monday or
soon?
Tuesday at the earliest.
Okay.
So hopefully you can cancel. I mean, if you can wait until Monday or Tuesday, but I mean, if the venue is watching like you are, they obviously know that there's a potential for disruption, at the end of the week. So I would say we'll know much better by Monday, Tuesday. Because by then there'll actually be thunderstorms. There may even be the beginnings of some type of tropical system forming.
Donna DeHart says, thank you. She loved the response regarding the record highs in north of Florida.
Okay, good. Very good. Yeah, I mean, look, these are good questions, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the future as it pertains to climate change. I mean, we've already warmed the planet by almost 1.5 degrees Celsius, so a little more than 2.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a lot because that's the global average. And that's a huge amount for the global average. I mean, we've warmed the planet more in 100 years than usually we warm it in tens of thousands of years.
Yeah.
So we're already seeing things change, but until we get years and years of data, we can't be sure if those changes are just temporary and natural, or if these are systemic changes that'll get worse or continue to change in the future. Yeah. We're going to be in a very unstable climate going forward until our temperatures stabilize. And there's not going to be any new normal. The new normal is that we should expect something different every year. And I'll give you an example. This past El Nino that we had last year, it was a strong El Nino, and we just had like 3 inches above normal rainfall during the winter. During the El Nino back in 97, 98, we had like 15 extra inches of rain. We had severe weather every other weekend. Wow. This El Nino was almost as strong, not as strong, but almost as strong. And it was almost like the atmosphere was like, whatever. It was almost like it didn't, because everything else was so warm, the El Nino wasn't relatively as powerful as it used to be 20, 30 years ago. Right. So we're going to be learning a lot in real time. And it's going to take us a while to quantify if the changes we're seeing are truly the signal of climate change building, or if these are just temporary changes. And then we go back to some, I don't know. It's tough to know.
Yeah, we're going to be watching. We have to stay tuned. Richie Rhodes says, flying to Houston from Tampa and back September 27th, September 28th. I will probably be affected until one place or the other, huh? Because he's going to
Or when you're flying. Because it could be stuck in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico.
They might cancel, though.
Well, no, then they would probably fly over it.
They'll fly over it. Okay.
Maybe not fly over it, but north of it.
North of it.
Yeah. I think there's a conceivable chance that the storm will be stuck. Like that red line you see right there. Wait a second. Is the red line up? No, we put it up. Sorry again, folks. I don't really cold. That red line. And by the way, even the German, the yellow line. Yeah. They both, at the end of their runs, the storm is like stuck. So it may be stuck there for a couple of days. Ooh. So I think it's going to be a slow burn, really. I better save my voice up.
Yeah, you're going to need to save it.
Maybe we should only take 2 more questions and then...
Dorothy says, thank you, Jeff. She just wanted to thank you for your reply. Poor Richie's like, thanks. But I think people, of course, we need to be flexible in terms of planning when these things happen. So the best advice is to just stay tuned, staying up to date with all the information on our weather app. Yep. And obviously on TV, of course.
And on TV. And by the way, we're going to be trying to do a lot more of these daily. Maybe 1 or 2 daily, especially next week.
That's a good idea.
So we can take people's questions when we actually have something that starts to form.
That's great. Okay? That's great. I think people are going to appreciate that.
All right. So to try to stop my voice from being totally lost, we're gonna end this episode.
Yeah, I think that's good.
But I do appreciate everyone joining me. I think it's going to be an interesting next week or week and a half. And every day we're going to get a little more information and have a little more certainty as to what's going to happen. So make sure you tune in not only here at WFLA Now, but also, as Val mentioned, on our website and on TV. And I'll also mention that you can watch this on our YouTube page later today. And in addition, this eventually gets sent to Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well as a podcast, so you can listen to it in your free time. All right. Thank you, Val, as usual, for being there. I appreciate it so much.
Till next time.
And everyone else, I will see you again soon. Thank you for joining us.
Watch or listen to Jeff's Climate Classroom, powered by Armor View Window and Door on WFLA social media platforms, and find Jeff's climate reports on WFLA.com.